Yay!
Hey.
Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back to this special edition of three funny astronauts from the tri-state area. Uh,
New York and New Jersey, even. You can cut out Connecticut.
oh yeah, well yeah, just New York and New Jersey. Yeah, we got our special guest today. This is part two with Scott Kelly. There's Scott right there, and we're just saying. By the way, we should point this out that we're as we usually say, we're not saying that we're actually funny, right,
Yeah,
Mass?
right. No, we're just funny for astronauts.
From New
Hold
York
us
and
to
New
that.
Jersey.
Yeah, hold us to that standard.
Maybe for some astronauts.
For
Depends on
some,
your sense of humor.
yeah.
It is a very
It's
low
like
bar. We like to point that out. Yeah.
if your sense of humor is more Three Stooges sense of humor, then maybe.
There you go. Right. What we think is funny. We think we're funny.
Oh, coming from Mr. Gorilla Suit over here.
yeah. Slapstick stuff.
I got a question for you, Matt.
Yeah.
And I don't know if Garrett experiences himself,
Mhm.
but Garrett and I have something in common that you don't have in common with the two of us.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to ask you both this question.
Yeah.
So occasionally I'll be giving a talk and you meet the people after, and you always get the guy will come up to you, generally, mostly guys, and they'll say, "Oh, I was going to be an astronaut, but I was too tall." Do you ever get that, Mask? Because you're like the
I
tallest.
get it all the time.
Ever. And what do
Yeah.
you say? No, you're not.
No, I said, no, I'm not. I said the limit was 6'4". Yeah, I know. I thought you had to be short to be an astronaut,
Yeah.
but nah. You
I
know,
usually tell those guys, "No, you're too short," and they're like, "What?"
Yeah, people ask me like, "What's the upper limit? You know, what's the height limit?" And I'm like, I was really much more worried about the lower limit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right. You got to be able to see over the windscreen, over the dashboard of the space shuttle.
Once I was at the NBL. This is the big pool in Houston where we practice our spacewalk. So you get in the big white suit and they pick you up with a crane, they drop you in the water, and you float around and you practice spacewalking. And to get in there, when the crane picks you up, there's this thing called a donning station, right? Which is it's like a little platform that you get on, and it's got your backpack mounted on there. And just higher than my backpack, somebody put a sign there that says, "You must be this tall to ride."
Smart Alex.
That's true.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of people think that because back in the old days, right, back in the 60s, there was before the space shuttle, there was more of a restriction on the height in both directions, short and tall. I had an Apollo guy come up to me one time and said, "Hey, you're kind of tall to be an astronaut." And I said, "Well, our limit was 6'4", my standard answer." I'm looking at this guy, and he's right almost like at eye level. And I'm like, "Well, wait a minute, what was your height limit back then?" And he says, 5'11". And I go, how tall are you? He says 6'1". I go, how'd you handle that? He goes, oh, it wasn't easy. He was a Marine, and he said he went to his flight surgeon and had him put down like 5'13" with a squiggly 3. And then he had bad. He did jumping jacks to compress his spine and before his interview, whatever. And he bad posture, and he got through. So there's always a way to get around that. So unless you're like, really tall. Like over 6. Well, I don't even know if they have a height restriction anymore. Do they?
So
No, they still do.
The new guys about that. I don't know if they even have that. They don't even have a height restriction anymore.
No, there is. There's a limit.
Okay.
But we've opened it up for Dragon. I think it's like up now to about 6'5", 6'6". We opened it up a little bit on both ends. But there's still a limit.
What is the reason? Do you not fit in the seat?
Yeah, I mean, when we design the seats and the suits and everything, you have to have some upper limit for the engineers to work to.
Mm-hmm.
So, but it was I can't remember. The requirements were given to us by NASA, and they intentionally opened it up and made it a little bit bigger than it was for shuttle.
Yeah, and the shuttle limit was not based on the shuttle. It was based on the T-38, the airplane that we flew.
Is that right?
Yeah. There was an upper, it had to do with the ejection seat and fitting in the airplane. So there was an upper limit, but there was also a lower limit.
Yeah.
That you couldn't be any lighter. But we actually had issues with Japanese females, and that was the when we put a new ejection seat in the airplane, trying to open up the demographic of people.
Yeah.
The lower limit was the certain percentage Japanese female to the upper percentage American male, and try to fit that in. So that's where the limit for shuttle came from the airplane. But then once we started flying the Soyuz, obviously the Soyuz seat, I don't know, I'm 5'7" on a good day, and I barely fit in that Soyuz. So I don't know how, like Paulo Nespoli, who's probably 6'2", they actually had to modify the seat for him to get him to fit. But I don't know how anyone taller than about my height fits in there, because it was brutal.
I think it's a sitting height thing, I think, as well, wasn't it? On the Soyuz, it was your back.
More important, because your legs, bend.
Yeah. Yeah. Scott Altman had this story where he was his sitting height was too much for the Air Force, but the Navy, they didn't care. Like, oh, we'll take you. See if you can fly. That's all we care about.
That's because he flew that cool airplane, the Tomcat, which was
which I wanted to ask you about.
Yeah.
So we talked about in our first version, we talked a little bit about your childhood and your brother growing up, and your dad setting you guys straight and setting your brother on a path. And then Tom Wolfe's book when you were a freshman at SUNY Maritime, right below the Throgs Neck Bridge, right?
Bronx, New York, baby.
There you go, right in the Bronx, right, man. So you were a student there, read Tom Wolfe's book, and then decided to become a fighter pilot. Did you think fighter pilot, test pilot, astronaut right away, or what were you thinking when you were in college?
Absolutely. I'm thinking. I mean, it was somewhat of a fantasy, but at least it was a fantasy that had a small chance of happening. Especially when you look at things, progressively. Like, you could never imagine like one of your high school classmates becoming a brain surgeon, right? But you could imagine, that same person that once they're a surgeon becoming a brain surgeon and a doctor becoming. So it's like this iterative process. So hard to imagine 18-year-old kid reads book, decides she's going to become an astronaut, 18 years later flies in space, right? That's my story. But when you're progressively increasing your skills, and once I became a test pilot, then it was much more possible. Never actually thinking it was going to happen. I think that would be actually pretty arrogant considering the odds. But for somehow, I applied once, got picked. My brother applied twice, got picked. My brother applied twice, got picked.
He would have gotten picked first time too if he flew Tomcats, I bet you.
Right? Probably.
Yeah.
Wait, once you got, because you were back then, I guess now they just have one category for this. Then there's an application cycle that's closing now, probably after this thing. Well, we're airing live, but when the podcast comes out, it'll be after that. It's coming, I think, in a couple of days. And like
soon.
April.
Good point. But, any of the listeners, you can still apply to be an astronaut, and I'll tell you what: if these two guys did it, so can you.
There you go. There you go.
I think there's only like 4 more days left, though, so you got to hurry up if you're listening to us live.
Yeah. Stop listening.
I filled mine out like a few days before it was due. The guy in my office was working on a stack of papers. Fellow test pilot, I said, "What's that?" And he goes, "That's my astronaut application." And I looked through it, and I'm like, "Holy shit! Oh, really? All that? You want to read that?" I go, "When is this due?" And he goes, like, "Tomorrow." In reality, it was like a few days later. I go, "You know what? I'm going to send in an application." One pager, the important stuff.
Yeah, that's good strategy, actually.
Yeah. Who didn't get picked?
That guy.
The guy with all the paper. There was too much paperwork.
They were like, "Are you serious?"
Yeah, and this was in a day where you had to fill out an application. Now you get online and do something, I guess.
It's all electronic
you get
now.
A pen or a typewriter. They don't even have typewriters anymore.
That's true.
10 years ago, I was looking for one when I was still with NASA. They didn't have one on site anywhere. They didn't know it. So this was a different era back. We had it tough back then, kids. But wait a minute. So if it wasn't for this guy, you wouldn't have applied to be in our class? You don't think? Even though this is something you were wanting to do, you didn't realize what was happening?
I was wanting to do it like 10 years later because I didn't have a master's degree. I didn't feel like I had a whole lot of experience.
Yeah.
I felt a guy with a bachelor's degree from SUNY Maritime College that no one's ever heard of outside of the Bronx or the maritime industry would not have a chance. I figured I needed a master's. I was thinking of like going to like Georgia Tech and getting a master's in neuroengineering. A lot of astronauts have done that.
Yeah.
So when I got picked, I just had a bachelor's degree in engineering.
Really?
Yeah, which is very unusual.
Yeah.
Interesting. But you gave it a shot.
But you had something going for you, which is that you're from New Jersey. And we all know that the best astronauts all come from New Jersey, right?
And
I
and
mean,
the
come
Bronx
on.
didn't help.
Wally Schirra,
That's right.
Buzz,
Buzz. That's right.
Lansky,
Ken Ham. And
Blansky.
Mario Runco.
Mario Runco's from the Bronx, man.
Oh, but he was a New Jersey State Trooper.
That's right. He was a New Jersey State Trooper.
So I think that should count.
Is that amazing?
Who do you got from Long Island, Mass? Who we just named a whole bunch of really good ones from Jersey. Who do you got?
Who do we got? We got Jim Weatherby.
Weatherby's from Long Island?
Beamer's from out here.
Oh, Beamer's legit.
Weatherby's from Huntington, Long Island. Beamer.
I figured he was like from the Midwest for some reason. He seems like
he grew up out further from the city. Maybe that made a difference. Mario, I guess, Bronx, but he also worked as a New York State Trooper. Carol Bobko was from Brooklyn. Can you imagine? He recently passed. You ever meet him?
Oh,
he was a shuttle pilot back at the beginning of that time.
I went to his memorial service recently.
Oh, good man. He was from Brooklyn. But who else? Charlie Camarda was from Queens.
Camarda.
Okay. Not too far.
He was one of those what was that thing you guys did with
the New York Crew?
The New York
Crew.
We were the New York Crew. Yeah, we did. So for the listeners, we used to supply entertainment as the new astronaut class for the Christmas parties. And so there was a crew from Ohio. It was like Kevin Kriegel and Hendricks and Nancy Curry and a few. I think everyone was from Ohio, except Kriegel's from Long Island. But they made him an honorary Ohio guy. Yeah, Kriegel's also from Long Island. So, there's a bunch from New York, right? It's a big state. Anyway, but the New York crew is we based it on the all Ohio crew. They had their patch was in the shape of the Ohio O, from Ohio State and all that. And so what happened? We were kicking around ideas for skits. What happens if you had a crew all from New York? Well, we had Charlie Camarda, which is as New York as you could get. I mean, he was like his character out of Saturday Night Fever, and now he's an astronaut. It was really he's the only astronaut in the who had cologne in his locker and went for a manicure every once in a while. This was a whole new, and it never really caught on. He's I think still the only one. It wasn't like, oh, everybody, we got to get some cologne in here. It was the only guy. But Charlie is also from the area. We did the New York crew.
And wore these really fancy like brief underwear in the locker room. I remember.
Yeah, Charlie it was different. He was from the Saturday Night Fever era. He was from
the hair dryer and
he had a hair dryer. No one had a hair dryer.
Hey,
no one had enough hair to have a hair dryer.
Speaking of that, when we changed astronaut gyms, remember we got the new and when I cleaned out my locker in the gym when we moved, I found a comb. And I was like, I didn't even have any hair left. I was like, what the hell? When is that?
From the early days.
I think Camarda used to stick them all over the place just in case they ever needed one in an emergency.
Camarda had them everywhere. He also used the box because he grew up like when the Golden Gloves were. He was from a different era, really. He was out there, and he used to use the that speed bag and all that stuff. And Charlie's unbelievable. But anyway, we did the New York crew, our first
with Soichi Noguchi. Which was amazing because this guy's Japanese. His English was really good then, I guess, for a non-native speaker. But the fact that he had like comedic timing in a foreign language was just incredible.
Multi-talented. He fit in as a New Yorker. Yeah, absolutely.
He was funny in that. Yeah, he was great.
You talking to me? He kept doing that. He was great. He knows his line. He still does that. I did a couple downlinks with him when he was on the station, his latest mission. And he did that a few times. You talking to me? Yeah, so. Yeah, no, it was great. It was really fun. But getting back to you, Scott, when you're flying in the Navy, and I was going to say, when we applied, and we were talking about get your applications in now, kids, there was two different groups of astronauts, right? We had mission specialists like Garrett and I applied to, and then you had the pilot astronaut. And you went in, of course, as a pilot astronaut and learned to fly the shuttle. But I remember you telling me at one point the way things went is almost like you started doing your career wasn't just being a pilot. It ended up being things that mission specialists traditionally would do, like the long duration flights and the spacewalks and the robotics. And tell us a little bit about that once you got to NASA and the way things progressed to get you eventually on that year-long mission.
Yeah, that's interesting because that was not my plan at all. Like I flew my first mission was to Hubble in 1999, before yours.
You were the first pilot. I think some of our internet. Were you the first American to fly, or I know you were the first pilot? The first
No,
American
I was
and
the
the
first
first
pilot and the first American in
Yeah.
our class to fly.
Yeah.
Julie Payette and Pedro Duque flew
Right.
for me from Canada and Spain. And then, yeah, so my plan was to fly another flight as a pilot and a couple flights as the commander of the space shuttle, because I was considered myself a test pilot and a shuttle pilot type. That was my plan. And then, the space station wasn't being, I mean, I think the first piece had launched right in 98, but there was no people up there by the time I got back from that first mission in 99. And I thought, I'll fly those 4 flights and then later I'll go and maybe do a long duration flight because that'll be a thing then. And as soon as I get back from my Hubble mission, I get a call and they say, hey, we want you to go and be the DOR in Russia, which is the director of operations in Star City. You're kind of like the mayor for the U.S. people in the Gagarin Cosmonaut Training Center, and you negotiate some things with the Russians. You're kind of like the liaison between the Russian space program in Star City and the astronaut office or NASA. And I was like, no, I don't want to do that. I want to go be a Capcom and then fly another shuttle mission as a pilot. And they're like, no, we want you to do this. And I'm like, really? I'm like, okay. So I went over there for 9 months, did that. I come back. It's like
Did you ever figure out who you pissed off?
I don't know, but I come back and Charlie Precourt, I come home. This is before I had a cell phone. And it was I guess it was December of 2000. And it was right after Christmas, between Christmas and New Year's. I get home, we were out of town, and there's a message on our answering machine. I push it, and it's, hey, Scott, this is Charlie Precourt. Give me a call. And when you get those random calls from the chief of the astronaut office, depending on the timing, you might think, hey, this is a flight assignment, because the chief doesn't regularly call you unless it's something really, really good or really, really bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I didn't think I had done anything bad recently, so I thought it was something great. And he goes, yeah, hey Scott, I want you to be the backup of Expedition 5, Peggy Whitson, but you're not going to fly as the prime after. You're just going to be the backup. And I was like, what?
That's a terrible deal.
Why? He goes, I go, why? Why do you want me to do that? You got all these people in the astronaut office. This is a job for
nobody else will do it. That's
he goes, no one else will do it. He goes, everyone else refused. And I'm like, and he goes, you got a little experience with Russian, and I need somebody now. And you have experience over there because you just got back. I need to start sending you back over there. And I'm like, oh, I don't want to do that. I want to fly as a pilot and then the commander twice, and then I'll think about it in 10 years. And he's like, well, what are you going to do? And I go, Charlie, well, I'm not going to, I'm a military guy. If this is an order, I'll take the order to do it. I gave him every reason why I thought I was the wrong person. And I go, but I can't tell you no. And he says to me, he goes, well, you're going to have to tell me yes.
Wow.
So go home and think about it. And I'm like, I don't think he put it exactly that way, but he goes, I'm going to need an answer of yes. I'm not going to need an answer of I won't tell you no. You have to agree to do this. So I go home, I talk to my wife at the time and the pros and cons. And, for me, it's always about, doing the hard stuff, even when you don't want to do it. Maybe give your management the reason why maybe you're not the best person. But if it comes down to it, you work for NASA and it's not just about you. It's about what the program needs. So eventually I said, okay, Charlie, I'll do that. And he says, okay, when you get back from that assignment, I'm going to assign you to command your next flight. I'm going to assign you your next space shuttle mission as the commander. So after only one flight as a pilot, which is rare. And then after that, I'll assign you to be commander of the International Space Station. And I was like, okay, well, thank you. And then I went off and did this really, really hard, almost thankless job of being the backup of someone when you're not going to fly next. You know, it was interesting. She goes to Florida to launch, and I just sit at my desk and watch it. And Peggy's gone, and I was like, okay, I guess this is over. And I work, and then Charlie he leaves as the chief of the astronaut office. And I would think, okay, there goes that deal. Like,
oops.
But then the next chief, Steve Lindsay and I guess
Rommel.
Rommel called me and said, "Oh, we're going to sign you to STS 118." And in retrospect, it was really, even though I didn't do it for this reason, I did it because I thought it was the right thing to do for the organization. But in retrospect, it was really the better thing to do for me because it just gave me such a wider breadth of experience in the office. I mean, being able to fly as a pilot of a Hubble mission, commander of an ISS assembly flight, and then do 2 long duration flights, one at the time being the longest American flight ever, just gave me, much more broader experience than a lot of other people had, like including my brother. He flew 4 times, but all 4 of his flights were to the space station. So they're very similar. Whereas mine, each one of them were very, very much different.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it shows you sometimes doing the stuff that you don't think is good for you.
Yeah.
Because it's too hard, might turn out to be the right thing.
There you go. That's the gem right there. Yeah, saying yes and doing what the right thing is.
I think on the whole, NASA leadership
right thing for you. Yeah.
They were pretty good about rewarding the people that took those, that did the things that nobody else wanted to do. So I think usually the karma works out in those cases, but not always. Yeah,
but I think you're right.
I remember my first week in training. It was January. I just gotten back from being the DOR. I've been there for 9 months. And then on January, I'm back. I'm sitting in this classroom. It's freaking freezing. Yeah. Middle of January, I'm in there by myself, and this guy's trying to teach me stuff about the Soyuz with these old posters and stuff. And he's I'm like, what the hell? And in Russia, it's crazy. Like at NASA, the way they teach you is this operational thing. You get some background information, but they're not teaching you how to build the space shuttle. That's someone else's job. Right? Giving you a little background information for understanding, but then they teach you how to how to operate the vehicle very well. I mean, space shuttle, most complicated aerospace vehicle ever built, probably will be the most challenging thing to fly ever because of automation, AI. Nothing will be harder than this, right? More complicated, probably.
It was a real pinnacle of human in the loop. I mean, we'll never do something like that again. Yeah.
Yes, but in Russia, this is completely different. I mean, if at NASA, if they were going to teach you to mail a package, they would say, okay, you get a box, you throw the stuff in it, you get some postage, you take it down to the post office, and you give it to them, and they send it. In Russia, they say they'll start in the woods. Okay, the part
yes,
where we decide which tree to choose, cut it down, and then we're going to learn what to do next in box making 101.
I remember taking ham radio lessons over there. It was like one of my least favorite things.
I refused.
You can refuse? I didn't know you could refuse
ham radio.
Wow, yeah. They're sitting in there teaching me how to build or design a Yagi antenna. Like I'm going to go up to the space station and design my own antenna and stick it on the outside or something, but not tell anybody. It was ridiculous.
And then it was funny too because there was the U.S. ham radio training. Remember that guy?
Yeah, we had to do both.
Yeah. Insane. Well, I didn't do that either.
Oh man.
And the ham radio guy's like, well, you can't use the ham radio. And he goes, and I go, that's fine. I don't want to use the ham radio. And he goes,
I know we had a phone. We had a phone up there. We can make phone calls. Why do we need a ham radio? Talk to some stranger. I can call people I know.
Yeah. He goes, well, what about in an emergency? I go, well, then I'll use the ham radio. And he goes, no, you won't. Well, you don't have a license. And I go, well, try to stop me.
You're like, call a cop.
You can get it when you come home, though. In an emergency, you have to do what you have to do. But when you get home, you get a ticket for operating the ham radio without a
Right.
license.
Yeah,
And
right.
they'll never let you do it again without a license.
The FCC will come and put the cuffs on me.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's a serious offense.
Yeah, Russia training was so much different. Like, you know, at NASA, it was about, hey, we made these mistakes in the simulator. What did we learn? What did we do good? What did we do bad? You know, sometimes if you don't do something bad, if you don't make mistakes, you could just be getting lucky. You know, you don't really know if it's just random that you did everything well. So the idea, I think, at NASA was to, like, you know, stress the crew, force the mistakes, have us learn from them. Russia, it was completely different. Like, our debriefs at the end of training, we used to have this big debrief, whether it was for Soyuz training or space station training, where the very last simulator, the final exam, you get out of the simulator, you go into this big conference room, and there'd be like 40 people standing around in there. And some of these people are like, you know, retired cosmonauts, retired managers, old instructors that don't even work there anymore, maybe a secretary or two. And it was this, the only way I could describe it was blame smithing. Like the crew and the instructors, and sometimes even the management, are trying to figure out who's at fault. Who are we blaming for these mistakes? It wasn't about let's try to learn from them. It was about who's responsible for screwing up. And it always seemed to me that the person that was the highest skilled in this blame smithing was the one that won the debrief and won the day. Which it would madden them when they would say, "So Scott, you like, why'd you do this?" And I was like, "I don't know, I just screwed it up." Yeah, that was me. I did it.
Yeah.
And crazy, they have that position in mission control where there's a person sitting there with a pen and a paper counting every single mistake cosmonauts make. And after the flight, they have a reckoning and they deduct money from their contract based on the mistakes they made, which is motivation for covering stuff up and not being honest. So I always told the cosmonauts, hey, if you screw something up and you're worried about getting docked your pay for it, just tell them I did it. You know, blame it on the American.
Which they did a lot.
Yeah, especially now, right? Man, those guys.
But it's a cultural thing. They have it's "Što dělat I kdo vinovat," right? Like, what are we going to do? And more importantly, who's to blame, right?
Yeah.
That's what it's all about.
And I think that's a big reason why, Russia is having such a hard time with their, illegal and immoral invasion of Ukraine, because they have this within the government, at least. I don't know society as a whole, but especially, what I learned within their space program is, accepting responsibility was not always the priority, and I think their military has a similar thing where they tell their superiors what they want to hear, so they're not, blamed for screwing up. So their pay's not docked, maybe.
Yeah,
which is good now because, I want them to lose, and I want the Russians to lose big in this war.
I think it goes all the way to the top too. Like, I mean, Putin's never going to admit that he made a horrible blunder by getting him into this mess and take the blame. That's never going to happen, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely not. So I think if we continue to support them, specifically the U.S. House of Representatives, I mean, they really need to get Ukraine some funding here very, very quickly.
Yeah. Speaking of Scott, I remember we both got into a little bit of trouble on the old Twitter when with the old head of Roscosmos. Remember that?
You got in trouble with him too?
I just jumped on your bandwagon, man.
Oh, you did?
Yeah. We didn't get in trouble with him. Well, he did block both of us.
Yeah.
But we also got a little slap on the wrist from NASA at the time, right? I mean,
I got a call from NASA.
Yeah, I did too. Yeah.
From Pam?
No, it was from Reed.
I got a call from Pam Melroy, the deputy administrator of NASA, former astronaut, and I was actually asleep. And I pick up my phone. It says Pam Melroy. This is like a couple days after I got into this pissing contest with the head of Roscosmos, and he basically, I don't know, I forget the details, but he basically said, because I was being so critical, back up. Roscosmos tweets this video of them leaving Mark Vande Hei behind on the International Space Station. The Russians, and this particular guy, the head of the organization, he's responsible for this guy's life. Mm-hmm. Bringing him up there and back. And he's suggesting he would maybe leave him behind. And I just got into such a heated argument with that guy. Eventually, I sent my medal back, my medal of merit for space exploration. I sent it back to Russia. I said I didn't want it anymore. But then it was funny. One morning, Pam Melroy says, listen, I answer, I go, hey, Pam, I think I know why you're calling. And she laughed and she says, yeah. And she, it was a good conversation. She says, you have every right to say whatever you want. And I respect that. But understand, it can sometimes make our jobs harder.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, I get it.
Good.
I still get into it Rogozin's no longer the head of Roscosmos, so
now he's cosplaying as a soldier. You see
exactly.
him down there. He's got all the NATO gear, walking around like he's some big general.
Yeah. He plays make believe army man, and he actually got blown up. So I guess if you
get blown up,
I guess if you get yourself blown up, you're really.
He was having a birthday party.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I don't think it was his party. Was it his party?
I think it was his party, and it was like he invited all the generals, and they were all talking about it on their phones, and they intercepted that, and they sent the HIMARS, right?
And yeah, I got into it again with him recently.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and he reacts to me. It's the weirdest thing.
Wow.
He doesn't like me.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just him. Everyone else likes you, Scott. Don't worry. Just one guy.
Well, you're doing a great job, Scott. You raised a lot of money to supply ambulances to Ukraine, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Now over I think total it's over like $3 million. And I was actually on a call the other day with President Zelensky and the rest of these United 24 ambassadors.
Mm-hmm.
Mark Hamill, one of them that people would recognize.
Mm-hmm.
Timothy Snyder is a Yale professor, a bunch of other folks, and talking about just trying to keep the message out there. People get fatigued over something like this long term, but I think it's really one of the most important issues of our time right now, because not only is this a threat to a democratically democratic nation in Europe, developing democracy coming from the Eastern European former Soviet bloc, but still trying to do the right thing. And this is not only a threat to Ukraine, but it's a threat to the rest of Europe, which is the threat to democracies around the world. So this is a critical issue, and it just shocks me that people now, I see people online, people in Congress sometimes cozying up with Russia over this, saying that they would support Russia over Ukraine. It's crazy. So sad.
And you've been over there, right, Scott? Didn't you make at least one trip over there?
Yeah, I've been over there once already, right in the first year of the war, and got to go to President Zelensky's office. The whole trip, I went to Bucha and saw where those genocide, those atrocities occurred, where people were buried, outside that church, where people were murdered, went to hospitals and saw kids that were injured in the shelling. I say it was the fifth most meaningful trip of my life, and that's only because I've flown in space 4 times.
Mm-hmm. Most meaningful trip on planet Earth.
Yeah. Good point.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, but we need to continue to support them as best we can.
Yeah.
Hey, did you guys, by the way, changing subject, did you see my new TV show?
No, what is this? What's going on?
The one on Apple TV. Yeah. What's it? It's the one where she comes back.
Constellation.
Constellation.
minute.
That's it. Thank you.
Start from the beginning on this one. This is
I'm
good.
in it.
But the girl from the dragon tattoo.
Yeah, Numi Rapace. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, she's great.
I heard it's awesome.
It's I think it's awesome. I'm a little biased on the space stuff because I was the consultant. Thank you for your help on that, Garrett. I got some advice from Garrett, having he has experience in that with For All Mankind, but I was the astronaut technical consultant for the space stuff. And I think the job they did with the space station and how well the astronaut or the actors portrayed astronauts in space was pretty well done. But it also stars Jonathan Banks, which is really cool. He was that guy in Breaking Bad.
Yeah.
It's a great show. Science fiction, but also has a lot of reality of what it would be like to live aboard the space station.
I actually saw an article in the media where you're talking about working on that show, and you gave me that shout out about that conversation we had. So that was nice. Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, hopefully other astronauts that do this will then talk to, because I got a lot of good advice from you about the three. Okay, you got the three like levels of, hey, you have to fix this because this is stupid. Like this doesn't make any sense. Like if someone was crying in space and you see a tear going down their face, right?
Yeah.
That would be a must fix. And then there's the things you should fix. And then there are things that don't really, fix them if you can, but if you don't, it's so kind of okay,
Yep.
That's kind of how I looked at it, and it seemed to have worked well. I think we're maybe even looking at.
Yeah, I got a clip right there.
Yeah, that looks pretty good.
That's a pretty good. That's a pretty accurate looking set.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. The space station that they built in Berlin was amazing. It was better than much realistic than Building 9 at the Johnson Space Center. Built for a different reason. I mean, Building 9 isn't built to look exactly like the space station. It's built for more. It's just built for training and functionality, so it makes sense to be the way it is. But the space station they built was incredible.
It's amazing what they can do.
Yeah,
in the Hollywood game. And so, did you go over to Germany to do that, or how did that work?
Yeah, I spent a lot of time on Zoom calls, but I also spent made 2 trips over there for a couple week or two each. And had like astronaut training with the crew members about how do you behave, how do you float, how do you talk on the radio, which is a big
the one thing I keep telling them whenever we do that for All Mankind is like, don't just start moving in slow motion. We don't move in slow motion, we move in like real time. They also I'm in space. That's like mistake number 1.
Yeah. But you do move but when you see people come on, it's funny. Like when you're on a shuttle mission, right? And you fly around, especially like a shuttle that docks to the space station, right? Remember people would fly in like Superman, and then they kind of spend their time floating around the space station like alligators all day, where the people that have been there for a long time are more upright, like Homo erectus, right? And it was weird. You're in different like attitudes mostly. They're moving around like this, and you're moving around like this. Kind of an interesting.
When you see the shuttle guys, when they first come up there that haven't been up there for a while, they're like a bull in a china shop. They would always they would launch and they'd be careful, but if they're going from like point A to point B, they would like take off and they'd be careful about that. But they wouldn't think about like where they're going to stop. They wouldn't plan their landings, and so then they would get there and they'd like, oh, I can't grab this cable, and then next thing you know, they're out of control and they're like knocking into walls, and it's pretty humorous actually.
Where towards the after you've been there a long time, certainly, I got to the point where I would just kind of move around, just with my big toe on my right foot is actually how I would propel myself, just with that subtle small amount of force. And I'm looking for a picture of my toe. I want to show it.
I'm just thinking about what kind of an amazing astronaut Daniel Day-Lewis would make.
I was watching There Will Be Blood on the plane 2 days ago. And that guy's an amazing actor. I saw he just agreed. He hasn't done a movie in like 10 years, but he's agreed to do a movie with Christopher Nolan. I don't know what it's about, but here's what here's what your big toe looks like after a year, and this was on
Oh
the
my
space
goodness.
station towards the
Oh,
end.
Oh, is
And
that just from wearing against the foot restraint? Is that what that is?
yeah, you're just propelling yourself with
Wow.
my
wow.
right toe. That was how I
Wow.
moved around.
Oh man, that's creepy. But maybe you should have used some more toes.
Yeah, maybe try the other toe for a while.
Apparently, I'm right-toed.
Wow, that's interesting.
Let me ask you guys this. It's got with all that time up there. It's like, I was only up for 2 weeks at a time, and I felt, I knew I could get around much better on the last day than the first day after 2 weeks. But from what I've heard is, of course, as you go along, you feel more and more at ease. Was there like a time? Was it like a month or a couple months, or was there something where you felt like I live here, or something switched? Did that happen at all?
Let me let Garrett answer that first, and I'll follow
Okay.
up because I'm curious what he thinks.
I think it was for me. I think it was like about a month. Because until you get to a month, it's still weird, and it's still like surreal that you're in this microgravity environment and you're not really that adept at living in it. And after about a month, it becomes normal, and that might sound anticlimactic, but for me, actually, I thought that was wonderful because once you fully adapt and get used to it, it's like I described it as like it's like you can go to Paris for like 2 days and you could run around and see the Eiffel Tower and the Louvre and everything and Notre Dame, or I guess not anymore, but anyway, you used to be able to. And then that's one way to do it, right? And then you could go and spend like a whole summer there, or even several months, and you get to know where like your favorite cafe is and who makes the best baguette, and you really soak it in and become a Parisian, and I
Hmm.
think that's kind of the difference. Is it
Hmm.
the same for you, Scott? Or
Yeah, I would say a month is definitely a big milestone
Hmm.
where your space foggy brain kind of goes away at around that time, and your ability to like think like you were able to think and operate when you were on Earth. That's when that kind of transition happens for me. It was about a month point. Then I think there's another one where about the 3 month point you're really pretty comfortable, but then you continue to evolve the whole time, but more slowly. But towards the end, I mean, I was able to like move around with just my big toe and be able to just push off with your toe under a handrail and like, grab onto a handrail that might be behind me and, over my head,
Hmm.
uh, kind of walk around the space station with your feet. But you never, at least I never have felt completely normal. I've had other astronauts tell me that have been up there for less time that they felt exactly the same as they did on Earth, which I
wow.
never did, right? I don't see how you could, but I've had people tell, "Oh, I didn't feel any different than I was on Earth." I always had felt like my head was swollen,
Hmm.
my sinuses were congested, the CO2 was high when I was
Hmm.
there a lot of times. I think it's gotten better now. So yeah, my eyes would burn from the CO2 sometimes.
Hmm.
My vision was affected always on my space flights in different ways. So yeah, I never felt normal like I did on Earth.
How effective or all the countermeasures like the ARED and all that at keeping you healthy when you got back? If you don't mind divulging some private medical data, like
Yeah.
what percent of your bone density were you down? And
I lost some. Fortunately for me, I started with more than average. I guess I'm thick-skulled, maybe. I don't know. But
probably why you didn't listen to your dad when he was trying to give you advice.
yeah, right. I lost I lost 25% of my heart mass.
Whoa.
Yeah.
25%?
Sounds like a
Yeah.
lot.
That doesn't sound good.
Like a quarter. Last
Yeah.
time I checked. Like Garrett's quarter a year
God.
in space.
Yeah.
My
Did it
wife
come
says,
back? Did you get that 25% back?
it was funny. We were in the Oval Office, and after my flight, my brother was there. We were visiting with President Obama, and my brother says to President Obama, he goes, "Yeah, my brother lost 25% of his heart mass." And Amiko, my wife, now she immediately responds. She goes, "Good thing he started with a big heart."
Oh man, that's
And
great.
then President Obama goes, "She's a keeper." But
Get on a Miko.
yeah, there was that bone loss, muscle loss. I think the worst thing for me though, the most disturbing thing was the swelling I would get in my legs when I would stand up, like for the first couple of weeks. I mean, I would watch my legs go like this. My ankles just swell up, like go from like this to like this within like a couple of minutes. And that was probably the hardest thing. But I would say probably 6 to 8 months before I felt completely back to normal.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. I did see something very similar with those passengers on the cruise ship at the buffet.
Yeah. They're ready for that.
Yeah. A similar effect.
Yeah.
The exercise helps. I mean, without the exercise, I mean, you'd be a mess when you got back.
That 25% loss in the heart, were you able to get that back, Scott, after a while?
Oh, it all came back. Yeah. But it makes sense, right? Because our hearts and the rest of us were designed and evolved in gravity, and our hearts, supposed to be pushing against gravity, and that exercises the muscle on every beat. And when you get to space, it no longer has to force as much blood with as much force to your brain. So it makes sense that even though you're exercising, that it would get deconditioned.
Yeah.
It's just surprised at the amount.
Yeah, I thought the deconditioning you would have done would have kept it closer to where it was. But
but speaking of medical things, I have a question for you two guys, because I have this astronaut milestone, at least EVA astronaut milestone coming up that some guys that have done spacewalks have to unfortunately experience. But I got shoulder surgery coming up.
Oh,
have you guys had any?
Yeah,
I managed to escape that. I haven't had any shoulder issues, but almost everybody does. I mean, it's extremely common, right?
Yeah. My left shoulder is a mess. I mean, I have a severed ligament that's like retracted.
Ooh.
And the doctor's like, oh, hopefully I can loosen things up in here and get it reattached.
Yeah. No, I had I have tears in both. My right shoulder, I'm righty, but my right shoulder was a tear that he thought I could get away with. I didn't have to get repaired. And just did, a lot of exercise rehab. The left shoulder though was a pretty good tear that Dr. Lowe back in Houston repaired. But both of them now pretty much aren't very good. But It's not the same. I'm like, because like I tried throwing a pitch out at a Yankee. I did throw a pitch out at a Yankee game in 2019, and I hadn't thrown a baseball, I guess, in a while. And it was like lifting a cinder block above my head. It was like, oh man, just to get above my shoulder. I was like, geez, something's wrong here. And so I think, it's all the wear and tear. It was mainly NBL wear and tear, I think.
Yeah.
And with the Hubble flights, and we used to do like back-to-back days. And then they changed those rules where we stopped doing that, and that probably just made it worse. But at this point, I'm like, well, it doesn't really restrict anything that I'm doing. So I do whatever I can to try to keep them loose and exercise with them. But it was, when we're training for spacewalk, you need to be able to. Right now, I think I'd probably get them both repaired if I was still at NASA.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, but it's worth it.
You can get them repaired now.
Yeah. Oh, is that right?
That Treat Astronaut Act will cover that surgery.
I don't think I know about that act. Is that
I was talking to my brother yesterday about my upcoming shoulder surgery, and he goes, well, you should look into the new legislation. There's Treat Astronaut legislation that will cover this. So like for mine, my military retired TRICARE will pay for part of it, but stuff that isn't covered, like all the out-of-pocket stuff, will be paid by NASA.
That's interesting. Well, that's a very helpful hint right there. I didn't know that.
I'll send you the legislation.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, no, because I've heard rumors about that, but I never really. Yeah. I thought it got voted down a lot and didn't get through. But all right, that's good news.
Yeah. Any advice though on the recovery?
The recovery of it.
Yeah.
You should talk to your guy. But basically, it was like I remember it was 1 month. It was like 3 months. Like 1 month doing nothing with the arm, kind of having it in one of those slings. And mine was a torn labrum. So it was like 1 month of healing and then another month of getting your working every day to get your range of motion back. And then another month of building the strength up. So it was a 3-month rehab. But after that, I tell you what, after those 3 months, it was like a new shoulder. It was stronger than ever. Like I remember being constrained lifting weights and stuff because it would hurt so much. But after that 3 month, it was like it was brand new.
Okay.
So, yeah.
I'm not looking forward to it.
Just get a good guy.
Yeah.
Make sure you have a good guy doing it.
Thanks.
That treat astronaut, does that covers like all kinds of medical issues?
For me, it's a little bit different being retired military, but for you guys, I think it's more comprehensive, actually. So I'll send it to you.
How comprehensive? Would it cover like hair transplant? You think we...
I think if you could make the case that your hair fell out as a result of your space flight, absolutely.
You saw the picture of me when I started.
Absolutely. Show them the before and after.
I
think it was space flight that made me bald.
Absolutely. My hair was in white when I went to space. I had no salt and pepper. I went dark and then boom.
Yeah.
A week later.
You went right from pepper to salt.
Right, exactly. Not even salt. Complete white. It's not even gray. It's like when you need those eclipse glasses to look at my head.
Hey, at least you can color that stuff. You know what you can't color?
Yeah, that's what I agree with. That's what I've been trying to do is just keep it on my head. I'll be happy.
Yeah, you're complaining to the wrong crowd here, Mass.
Yeah, no, I know. Anyway, but you guys look good. There you go. Before and after.
There we go again. Yeah.
That's the proof right there. No medical science. How are we doing on time here, Doss? We good? What do we got?
I was going to jump in. We got another 13 minutes in the show, but we have come up on 45 minutes for this air quotes episode. Whatever y'all want to do. I mean,
I was just going to say for Scott, we touched some of the stuff you're doing now. But it's been since you. I mean, we talked about the stuff you did in space and some of the things you've done more recently after. What else have you been up to? I mean, you left the office. How long was that? 8 years ago?
8 years ago.
8 years ago.
Yeah.
And you've written a bunch of books, and you got this TV show, and you've been all kinds. Tell us some of the things you've been doing since, and what you're up to now.
So my main job where for paying the bills is doing like public speaking, motivational speaking. Been trying to come up with a new talk. My old talk was great, but I've been doing it for so long. My agent's like, hey, this is kind of like old story. You got anything new? What do you got? What do you got new for me? I need something new. I'm like, I think maybe I need a new agent. That's what I need.
Alert there, Mr. Agent.
I've used all my best stories, and you want me to come up with new stories that aren't the best stories. So I've been working on that. I'm working on that for like a year. But always trying to write some ideas for maybe another book. I do some consulting, a little bit of company board stuff. I was on the board of a few SPACs, which are no longer as big of a thing as they once were. I recently got on board with this company called Urban Sky that have these balloons that fly in an area of our atmosphere where is not, above like 70,000 feet, that can put payloads on these balloons for, things like urban planning. There's all kinds of applications for this environment. Young new company, so that's exciting. Trying to help them out, but always looking for other opportunities to do things. My brother calls me every once in a while. He says, "Hey, what'd you do today?" It's like I swam a mile and walked a dog. He goes, "You should get a job."
Why?
Why? I like swimming and walking the dog. Because you need a job. I'm like, no, I don't.
Especially in your neighborhood, you got that beautiful location there, right, with all the red rocks right around your house. It's gorgeous. Yeah. I mean, we were talking before we started taping about how if I were you, I would never leave the house. It's just beautiful there.
It's a danger. So yeah, I'm busy. I enjoyed it. There's a possibility I might look for some other stuff to do at some point if the right thing came along. But so far.
What about the flying? I get asked this a lot. Flying in space again. I'm sure you guys get asked that too. Is that something you'd like to go back and do? You think at some point, either of you guys?
So if someone said, "Hey, we have obviously we're not going to go back and fly for NASA, right? Because that seems historically to be not to be a revolving door, right?
Except for John Glenn.
Oh yeah. One guy did it.
Yeah, one guy.
Might be another guy that I could see pulling something off that himself like that someday, maybe.
Who's that? Mario Ronco?
No, some other U.S. senator.
Oh, I need to go back.
Oh, I see.
We need more Twins data.
Yeah.
I jest, but you never know.
Yeah.
But would I want to work for Axiom if I had to do the day job, the training? Would I do that to fly to the space station? Probably not. I have a wealthy friend that was kind of interested, and if he was to do it, I had talked to Axiom that I could fly with him as like the commander of the crew, but he's really not interested. I think he's too scared, actually. But if someone came along and said, "Hey, I got a private mission to the moon," and it made sense, I would consider that. Absolutely. How about you, Garrett?
Yeah. Given an opportunity, people ask me a lot. Does that why I went to SpaceX to get a chance to fly again? And I'm like, no, because I had a chance to fly again if I stayed at NASA. I could have flown on the Soyuz. I was ready to get back in line. I went to SpaceX for other reasons, but if somebody came to me with the opportunity to do it, and if I can make a difference by doing it and help people out, then I would be happy to do that again. It's great flying in space, But yeah, I mean, it would have to, we both have a pretty good. I don't have a bunch of red rocks at my window or anything, but I got a pretty good setup too, and given all that up to do it permanently would be something I probably wouldn't do, but for the right opportunity, yeah, absolutely.
Remember when you called me and asked me to come work for SpaceX, and I'd really considered it. Remember that?
Yeah. That's when I was. Yeah.
And the reason I didn't was I thought, because I wanted to fly in space one more time. And I thought it was much more likely if I stayed at NASA. And good thing I did, because the opportunity I had really opened up a lot of opportunities after NASA that had I gone to SpaceX, maybe I would have had more or less, but you don't really know for sure. It could have not been the same. So I think I made the right choice. But thanks for reaching out to me and at least giving me an option.
Well, that's when we were first standing up to director of space operations, which I eventually ended up taking that job. But at first I was like, we probably should find somebody qualified. And that's why I reached out to you. And but then nobody took it. So I said, okay, I'll do it.
How about you?
I think I was going to say, go ahead, Scott. I'm sorry.
I was going to say, how about you, Mass? Would you fly again?
It's an interesting question. The easy answer is I'll go. But I think it would have to be there'd have to be a real reason where I felt like it was me that needed to go, and for personal reasons, I think it'd be really cool. But as both of you have said, I'm pretty happy with what's going on where I am on planet Earth. If there was another mission, like they needed someone to go back to Hubble and I was the right guy, I certainly would absolutely do that. But I really can't imagine anything like that. Unlike you guys, I don't have the space station experience. So I think there's going to be more of a need for that as we're moving forward with space stations. I don't. I think when I really think about it, it would have to be because I felt like I was doing something. Maybe there was something special as far as outreach goes, or because doing that, to do it right and to really make a difference takes a lot of time in the preparation and training for that, as we all know. And I don't know if that kind of opportunity would ever surface, but if it did, I certainly would want to go. I think I'm hanging around the planet.
Pretty good planet.
Yeah.
Well, maybe we should start wrapping up. We should you should get the book.
There you go, man.
Like that?
Yeah. Hey, I got another book here.
Excellent.
There you go.
Hey, and I put some of these links in chat as well. Folks, if you haven't checked out Scott
Look
Kelly's
at that.
book. And, look, there's Moonshot.
There you go.
Yeah, there you go.
Begs the question, Garrett. Begs the question, where is your book?
Yeah, where's your book,
man? It's right over here. I don't know if you can see it's right there. And it's very heavy. I would pull it off the shelf, but I don't want to injure my shoulder.
It's never too late to write a book.
I put those links in
Right.
chat, the children's book and the endurance book. If anybody that's watching the show, or go down to the descriptions, we'll put a place. Like, I can promote the books. Y'all don't have to. Tell them to click on the link and stuff. Make it so Scott can keep swimming and walking the dog.
Scott's got a lot of books.
You know?
How many have you got, Scott? How many did you write?
2 kids books and a graduation book, a picture book, and endurance. So what is that? 5?
I count 5 there, yeah.
I didn't get all those set to show on the
But
screen. Sorry.
only 2 of them were New York Times bestsellers.
Oh,
That's enough. You really only need 1.
You get the title.
Yeah, that's right.
Like, you don't need to win 2 Academy Awards. You know, one.
No, you're an Academy Award winner.
Academy Award
with
winner.
1 or 2. Yeah.
You know, if you win
Sounds
2, you know what
best
you are? You're an Academy Award winner. Yeah.
Yeah.
Same thing.
Hey, Mike and Garrett, I also sent y'all in the chat the link to that Treat Astronauts Act so you can get
Thank
your
you.
shoulders checked out.
Oh, yeah. I
Thanks.
guess we get my hair transplant, too. Thank
Yeah,
you.
let's
I'll
pull
be
it all
looking
in.
for that.
Just link them to the show, like where we got your picture from the astronaut class. Just link them right there to the show and see like Exhibit 1, label it at the top.
Yeah.
Scott, if Apple TV comes after me for promoting the show, I showed that little clip from the show. I might need you to like make a phone call for me if that's cool.
Yeah, I think I can take care of it.
Okay,
No
cool.
problem.
Good deal. Do y'all have like an outro y'all want to do? We haven't done this before, so do you say like "see us next time" or anything, or how do y'all usually end the show here?
Yeah. See us next time. And like and subscribe. Is that
Thanks
what
for
we-
listening. Thanks for liking. Main thing was like. You don't have just like it.
No. Subscribe. Or whatever.
Subscribe.
Just-
What was it? What we want people to do?
you don't have to
Subscribe.
watch it. You don't
You
have
don't
to
have to
watch it.
watch it. Right. You don't have to watch it. Just subscribe.
Hit the
Yeah.
button.
Yeah.
Ring the bell. Hey, again, there's the website, twofunnyastronauts.com.
Yeah.
Has sort of the podcast, and these episodes will be there on the podcast. You might be listening to it there now, and the YouTube channel as well. We get these up on your YouTube channel too, guys.
Awesome.
And
But mainly
on YouTube, it'll go out to like all the Google, Apple Podcasts, all the usual places, Spotify, whatnot. It's all out there.
we mainly want to thank Scott for being with us.
Yes.
He's got so much experience in space and such a good storyteller. And I think we only scratched the surface, but we got a lot of good stories out of you today, Scott. So thanks so much. It's great. It's one of the great things I think about being a former astronaut is we get to do stuff like this, and just talk about remember some of the fun times and learn about each other. And so really appreciate you coming on with Garrett and I today. Thank you.
And we don't have to worry about the chief of the astronaut calling us up after and saying, "Hey,
That's right. Yeah.
hey, thanks for having me on, guys. I'd be happy to come on again sometime, not in the near future, but maybe
In about another week?
no. But
Thanks. Well, maybe I'll see you in New York next weekend.
I will. We'll be at the
Great.
same event.
Awesome. Yeah, looking forward to that.
See you guys.
All right,
Okay,
buddy.
guys. Thanks, everybody.
All
Thanks,
right.
Scott.
Thanks, Stas, John, Garrett, Scott.
Anytime.
Will you let us know when we're out?
Oh, you're not out yet. We're still
Okay.
live. I'll let you know in a second.
All
Time
What
out.
do you want to say?
Time out with all the other content. Yeah, we don't want to broadcast what you're going to say.
Exactly.
Hey, folks, if you're watching on our channel here, thanks for watching today. We'll snip this off at the end. But new thing, let us know if you liked it or not. I thought it was really cool. I'm sitting over here snickering. I had to mute my mic, so I'd be snickering on y'all's podcast. But maybe there's some DOS Snickers in there. But that's going to be the end of the live taping, live recording, whatever, today. And we will see y'all next time. Leave us some feedback down in the comments or whatever, and let us know. Should we do more of these? I think we're planning on doing more. But thanks for watching, y'all. We'll see you nerds later.